Hey, welcome back to Wang and Dude YouTube channel. My name is Melissa Carter. I'm the publisher of this indie publishing establishment, and I'm also the author. This is kind of an experiment for 2025 because that's when my book is going to come out. And I wanted to share the process with you because I got to say that during the pandemic, I would get frustrated with people who would be like, hey, you can do this, you can do that, but you need to pay me this and pay me that and do this. Well, of course, I'd love for you to buy my book, but I also think there has to be some kind of exchange, right? And so I wanted to share uh, this channel with you and hope, I think everybody's story needs to be told. And if you got a story in you, you should tell it. And if I can help in any way to get that story out, that's great. But again, big experiment for 2025. I'm publishing a book, my memoir. Very fancy, but it is again something that I think the motivation for it, ultimately, the fire to keep me writing, because that's what we're going to talk about today is writing, is my son. If nobody buys this book, nobody decides because the book is going to not only be in print form, it's going to be ebook, it's going to be an audiobook. If nobody buys any entity of this book, not even my family, my friends, and nobody, at least it's something that my son has access to when he's interested. He's not interested now. He's not going to be interested in that. But maybe as an adult, he'll be interested in his mama's story. I don't know. We'll see. But that's been my motivation. So, writing. I love writing. I love the rhythm of it. And so I wanted to share with you my process for writing this book. And the first advice I have is just vomit on the page. I've seen it before. It's not something unique for me to say, but vomit on the page. Because if you're like me, there's so many ideas in your mind and you can't get them all out. And I think the mistake a lot of people make when writing anything, whether it be short copy, an article, a paper, a book, they expect it to be perfect the first time they put it down. And I'm the same way. I'm impatient. And it would be great if the brilliance would come out on the page at the very beginning, but it's not going to come out on the page in the very beginning. In my mind, I try to visualize clay and molding clay because that's what it is. You put this hunk of clay. I've never done it, but I'm going to act like I know how to put clay together. You put the hunk of clay on the wheel and then you manipulate it until it becomes this beautiful piece that you can then put in the oven. Well, so is writing. And I started this process in July of 2023. That's when I finally decided, look, I've got time on my hands. The freelance world is great, but it's not always feast or famine. And so I'm like, instead of sitting around and, having negative thoughts about the fact that I don't have a lot of clients at the moment, what I'm going to do is use this as an opportunity. And I learned that from one of my clients that I do some media work with, that their attitude is that there's not a problem, it's an opportunity. That you hear the adage that you learn more from what goes wrong than what's right, and you in hindsight you know that, but in the moment you're like, I don't want to learn anything. I want this discomfort to go away. But it's a great opportunity in those moments to try something new. And that's exactly what I decided to do. So July 2023 is when I committed to this project. And I just finished the manuscript. I mean, the videos are coming at a time when the manuscript is being sent to the editor, but we'll talk about that. So what did I do for like 6-8 months? Well, I vomited on the page. When I decided to tell my story, I just started from the beginning and then just saw what came out. I know that I have friends who do more fiction writing, who do screenplays and stage plays, and they have index cards, and you see all these things about the index cards, and they index and they put the chapters together before they even start writing the book. And and again, everybody, the number one thing I want to say is that whatever is comfortable for you and what your mind feels good about is what your process should be. I have learned over my lifetime that despite the fact that I'd love things to be formulaic and everything in order and everything, it doesn't work that way. And you have to truly get to know yourself well enough to know what works for you. I bought index cards. I tried the index card thing, and it didn't register. Now, let's say I eventually do screenplays and that kind of thing, then I'm sure that will come in handy. But when it came to this book, it's about my story. And I think there was a natural progression from childhood to adulthood. Now, in the end, and we'll talk about that in a second, but just from the beginning, just vomit. Now, if you like to be somebody who uses I was looking for a spiral notebook to write your thoughts down, be that person. If you're somebody who wants to do it on the laptop, be that person. I will say that I am usually a spiral notebook girl, but I found in a lengthy thing like this, when I do articles, I have no problem writing it down on paper and then typing it again when I'm putting it on the laptop, because usually from the written word to the typing is when I edit. Like with the spiral notebook, I'll put an article out and I'll just, again, vomit on the page, whatever my thoughts are. Don't edit yourself as you're writing. Just get it out of your head. Then you can look at it again and say, okay, well, like the clay, right? Okay. The first thing you do when you vomit on the page is slapping that clay on the wheel. And then when you look at it again is when you start molding it. So don't beat yourself up if something doesn't look right. Sometimes it's a fragment of a sentence I may write down. Like, okay, I'll finish that sentence later. I can't think of that word, so I'm going to put a dash mark there and I'll fill it in later. I just got to get this out of my head. Because a lot of times if you try to edit as you write, then you're going to lose the momentum or the motivation for writing in the first place. At least that's my experience. So with a book, though, I was like, this writing it down and then translating it's going to take too long. Like I was getting a little stressed at the thought of having to do that. So I just would open up a document on the laptop and start writing, and would have sessions where I just dedicated my time to sit down and write. When Mr. Carter was at school, when Katie Jo had Mr. Carter, who, for those who don't know, that's my baby mama. We're no longer together, but she's my other parent, or his other parent rather. And she's my, co-creator of Mr. Carter. And so we work well together. And so when she's with him, then that gives me time to do it. During COVID, there were times where, even after I started writing, COVID came back around in our family. And so I used that opportunity when others were sick or when I couldn't be around my son, that I used that time to write. And so you dedicate time. Now, did I get up at 6 o'clock every morning and work for 30 minutes? No, I did not do that. But I found that being in love with the idea of finally doing this, like to actually commit to it and saying, hey, I want to do this. If nothing else for Mr. Carter, to have something in the future, then that caused me to, in my spare time, hey, I got to get to the laptop. In between those times, I use my phone. My phone, I would email myself ideas. I would put in the subject matter, book idea, and then in the sub, or in the main part of the email. See, I'm talking, I can't even remember how an email is structured. But in the email, I would put in, hey, don't forget to tell this story. Oh, remember that, and it would just be one sentence or maybe 3 words. But if I had an inspiration, regardless of where I was, I would make a note to send myself so that when I was sitting down, oh, that's a great thing to start writing. Because when you write a long form book, you can't do it all in one sitting. It took me months, nearly a year, to get this done. Now, the first draft took me 3 months. So the first vomiting took me 3 months. And so I spent 3 months just writing the stories down. Oh, I remember that. The book mainly has to do with my health. I had chronic illness as a kid. I wrote stories about that, about being in the hospital, about mom, about dad, about going to a funeral, about doing all these things and how I felt. And I didn't write all of that in one sitting. It was like, oh, I remember that time that we went to my grandfather's funeral. Let's write that down. And then sometimes I would be excited at the memory, finish it up for that day. The next day, I'd be excited to get back to it because I had to finish that story. So when you do a long form book, when it's nonfiction, like what I'm doing, it's story by story. There's a great book that somebody sent me many years ago. Because I've talked about writing for a long time. I've talked about wanting to write more. And that's one blessing from the pandemic. It gave me the time to do it. Be careful what you ask for, but it's a book called Bird by Bird, and it's a lesson on writing. And I'll put the link below, but it's a lesson on writing and not getting overwhelmed by your writing, which was based on the author's brother's struggle to get through a school paper. Again, Bird by Bird. I think I'm saying that right. I think that's the name of the book, but the actual title and the link will be below. I don't want to make these videos too long, but when it comes to writing, the first thing you got to do is give yourself time, give yourself grace. Don't say that you're behind. Don't say that you are a failure because you haven't gotten this done yet. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. If you want to write, then do it. And you've heard people say, just do it. But don't expect it to be perfect the first round. It's like your brain is the saucer and you're just pouring out the ideas on the paper. That's all you're doing in the first section. And take as long as you need. There is no rush to do this. I'm the worst at having to feel rushed and want to get it over with so that my inspiration doesn't go away. But when it comes to long form writing, your inspiration will go away, but there's a way to tap back into it. So I'll talk about more of that in the next video, but thank you so much. And I would love for you to subscribe, get notifications when new videos. If you find this useful, please comment below on any questions that you have. And I'm happy if I don't know the answer, I'll look it up for you and we'll address it in another one. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.